Right guys, today we will be doing The Instant of My Death by Sarah Jackson. So, I won't read the whole poem out, but I will give you a bit of a summary on what the poem means before we start it. So this is about a quiet and emotional shock. So, there's a moment where everything seems normal, but then it suddenly changes because there's a kid with a toy gun, not a real gun, a toy gun, and this creates a sense of fear inside the speaker, and this leaves a long-lasting emotional effect. And the world moves on, obviously, because it's just a child shooting a toy gun, but something inside the speaker changes forever. So let's get analysing. Line number 1. The bus was crammed and the fat man rubbed against my leg like a damp cat. Right, the first thing we see is a simile. Like a damp cat. What does that suggest? That suggests that this is a claustrophobic and irritating environment. Because not only do we know that from like a damp cat rubbed against my leg, crammed, this is sensory language. So over here we have sensory language, we have touch, we have heat, awkwardness, because when you're in a bus and your legs touching someone else, it is quite awkward. Most people don't like that. So the bus was crammed. It's not a nice environment. While you read the Jataka tales 3 rows from the back. Now this includes you. The Jataka tales, these are moral Buddhist stories. So these good stories. So this Jataka tales almost contrast with the speaker's discomfort. And the you is peaceful. So when the writer says the you, that means that there's physical distance. Obviously, we see that there's 3 rows from the back. So the writer is focusing on someone on this bus. We don't know who. So this suggests emotional. So not only emotional, but relational distance, because it's like she's being avoided by someone, or someone is avoiding her. Right, as we all stumbled on, wheels and hours, grinding and tripping. Now, wheels and hours, grinding and tripping, that is personification, and what does that mean? This means that the time and the movement, what can we think about that? The time and the movement, they feel, so what do you associate grinding and tripping with? So the time and movement feel mechanical and harsh. It's not a comfortable environment, so it's far from a comfortable environment. And over here, stumbled, this means clumsy, unsteady. That reflects the relentless nature. So this is relentless nature of the bus ride. As Speety rose up around us, sky propped open by its peak. Now Speety, this is a mountainous region, and Speety is located in India. Now this is beautiful imagery. Speety is very beautiful, and here rose up. This is described Speety as nature. So nature feels massive and alive. Now this moment contrasts with the bus interior. Why? Because this is suggesting that, look, the speakers notice Speety and they've noticed the outside world a lot more deeply than the inside cramming of the bus. I traced the rock line on the window with my finger. Now this, obviously, it's a very easy sentence to analyse. This just shows that the reader is bored of the environment. It's not a happy environment, and he's got bored to the extent where when you're in the car and you put your finger on the window and you're playing about, you're just very, very bored, irritating. Or this is almost childlike. That's how much boredom she feels. She's almost childlike, her actions. That can also be symbolic. How could it be symbolic? Well, this is symbolic because she's following the rock line. So we know that she's on a mountainous region, as we see in Speedy. So she's following the rock line. And what does that mean? She's following a path or a journey. So obviously she's following a journey or path in life because it's symbolic. Right, next stanza. Until, no, actually not next stanza. Counted cows and gompers, felt my eyes glaze over. This means the speaker is mentally checking out. Mentally she's moving away, so she's bored, in a meditative state, if you know what I mean, like meditating. So a gompus is a Tibetan monastery. So what is a Tibetan monastery? Well, that is just a small cultural detail. This is just basically just to make to make the poem look more real, just to add that little bit of imagery. Eyes glaze over. What can we say about eyes glaze over? That is a good sentence to analyze. That means that, look, emotionally, the speaker is numb. So when someone is numb, typically they've gone through harsh trauma. So we can here see that because her eyes are glazing over, that can suggest emotional numbness, which can suggest that the speaker went through trauma or detachment. Maybe she was abandoned. It's not clear in the poem what it is, but we do know that she's affected by something. Until we reach Granfu, there when the road divided. Now this is a scene shift, so we go from Speedy to Granfu. And time passes, obviously, where the road divided. This is a literal split. Okay, so this is a split. The road has split. But this is also symbolic. How? Because when the road splits, what can we think this of? We can refer this to a symbolic change of a turning point, a decision, a big decision that the speaker has made. And that's like the split that she's made. So, it's a turning point, big decision that she's made once. Right, next. I saw a thin boy in red flannel squat between two daubers. Now, this is clear visual detail. So, we have stuff like thin, red flannel, squat. That's all vivid, grounded imagery. So, two daubers. Daubers are typically in like South Asian countries, Pakistan and India. Daubers are small roadside. So, like small roadside food shacks. So, like street food. And this is a key line, but it's not the biggest key line. So remember, this is a key line in the poem, but it's not the biggest one, essentially. So what does that mean? This is the key moment because this sets the emotional turning point. So everything is normal here. I saw a thin boy, she's fine, nothing is going wrong, but this is setting the emotional turning point because this next line is where the speaker experiences the emotional discomfort, as we discussed the summary in the video. So, next stanza. A black-eyed bean slipped in between two crags. A black-eyed bean, this is a metaphor. Obviously, the boy is not really a black-eyed bean. But what can that suggest? This makes the boy seem tiny, not even human. Now, what can we say about that? Well, this can possibly be objectifying him, dehumanizing him, making him feel like he's nothing. A black-eyed bean slipped in between two crags. Now, slipped in. What does slipped in mean? You typically use slipped in to say something like, oh, a spider slipped in through an air vent. So, obviously, that's the metaphor, slipped in. This suggests he is barely there. His presence is not even noticed. He's easy to overlook, the boys. He was so small between two crags. What are crags? So, crags are harsh, rocky environments. Remember, we are in India here, and we did just back then experience Speedy. So, two crags. We're still in a harsh, rocky environment. The road did split, but we are still in the mountainous areas and ranges. He was so small that I almost missed him until he turned gap-tooth and shot me. Now this is a key line in the poem. This is one of the key lines. So we're going to analyse each line here. Gap-toothed. What does gap-tooth means? Gap-tooth, when you're little, you lose children, teeth fall out. When you're little, you lose teeth, so teeth fall out. This suggests that the kid is just innocent, he's childlike, and he's just playing, he's just having a bit of fun, okay? The moment of shock. Shot me. Shot me. We'll write that there just because I don't have enough space, but shot me. This is fast, aggressive. So everything is fine in this poem, but there's an instant shock. There's no warning. There's no build-up. And this is a sudden, that's a good word, sudden switch. This creates tension. So this creates tension and disorientation. Now, what else can we say about this? What else we can say about this is ambiguity. What is ambiguity? Ambiguity is emotional or symbolic things. So this is emotional and symbolic. Shooting. It's an emotional shooting. The writer experienced pain, but this is not a physical shooting, by the way. This innocent gap-toothed child has not actually shot her, obviously. Not physical. So, with a toy gun and a piece of me stopped then through the bus. Another key line, these two key lines, these are all key lines. These are definitely the bits that you would analyse in the exam if this poem came up. With a toy gun. What does toy gun? So this line suggests clarification and a big good word, relief. It's a toy gun, okay? We don't have to worry. There's nothing, it's not a real gun. But a piece of me stopped. A piece of me stopped. What does she mean by a piece of me stopped? She means there was a deep emotional impact. Still powerful. Now let's just move down here. What can that suggest? We're going to say that this is a metaphor. But what does the metaphor represent? Because metaphors represent something. This is a metaphor for a sudden, quick, emotional break. Trauma or loss of innocence. So we don't know, it could be any one of these three. She could have been abused as a child, she could have had some bad things happen to her, or been abducted, whatever, loss of innocence, so you probably get the reference, but we don't know what has happened to the speaker, but we do know that she has experienced something bad, unfortunately. Moved on, another key line. What are we trying to say by moved on? A very short line, also important. But why is the short line important? Because this is contrast. Why is it contrast? The speaker is frozen, the speaker is still, the speaker is in a deep state of emotional shock. This is how we can describe the speaker. Just stood there still. This is everybody else walking about, talking, cramming, talking. The speaker is frozen, but the world and the bus keeps going. Now, there's a very, very good deep point of analysis here, and we're going to talk about this symbolically. How moved on? What does that mean? That means that, what could that mean? That means that it could symbolize how humans keep going after deep emotional moments. So you could expand on that and say that, look, this is how humans have adapted. We can keep going after deep emotional moments. We experience trauma, but we do keep going. Right, last line. And the fat man beside me cracked open an apple with his thumb. This is a mundane action. What do I mean by a mundane action? I mean, this just means that everyday life continues. We're on the bus. It is still crammed, obviously, but still, everyday life continues. Now, this is a contrast between the speaker's emotional moment and the fat man's casual physical action. But we've got a word here which is, we can also analyse. And the fat man was having cracked. What can we say about cracked? So, cracked open is harsh. That is a harsh thing to say. Now, what can we say about that? This is maybe reflecting, this is reflecting on her feeling of being cracked. Being cracked. What does that mean of being cracked? Maybe she was tortured. Maybe all we know is that she went through some deep emotional pain. Now, so we know the summary. A quiet emotional shock, a moment where everything seems normal, then it suddenly changes. A kid with a toy gun, his gap tooth, creates a jolt of fear. It's not a real threat. It leaves a lasting emotional effect on the speaker though. The world moves on. Everybody's fine. The fat man cracks open the apple, but something inside the speaker changes forever. Now, we're not done yet because you guys need to know some big methods to remember for your exams. So, flashcards. I'm gonna write some big methods, and you guys can just reference these as flashcards. So here are some big methods to use in your exam. Number 1. This whole poem is first person. I. So what first person? Well, now what can we say about first person? Remember, in any poem, you will always say something like first person, second person, third person. Third person speaker. This is a vivid personal experience. This is a deep personal experience. And the writer wants us to feel her pain in this moment. Number 1, past tense. There are some senses of past tense. So what, obviously it is past tense, we know that. Powerful memory. So this is a powerful memory, but this is burned into her consciousness. She will remember this forever, it seems like. Right. Now the next one is a cyclical structure. Now what does that mean? What am I trying to say about cyclical structure? What I'm trying to say is that, as we see, there was a fat man at the start. So we have a fat man at the start. And there's also a fat man at the end. So this highlights how her outlook has changed. So how the outlook has changed. So how really has the outlook changed? So before the shooting, she was bored, lonely. After the shooting, she was left with a powerful impact, essentially. So yeah, another one. Another key method, I'll just move to the side. Key method. Enjambment and structure. Now, what do I mean by enjambment and structure? I'll tell you what I mean. I mean, there's a flow between mundane and interest. Why does that matter though? Well, that shows that this shows how mirrors real life. It doesn't pause for emotional impact. Everybody keeps going. We see that with the fat man, just cracking open an apple and moving on. He's eating because typically people will eat during high stress emotional moments. Let's say you find out someone died, you won't be eating, you'll stop eating. But because the fat man is eating, obviously it shows that everything is fine. Next one, if you look up back to the poem, we can see a metaphor. Now, there's a lot of metaphors in the poem, there's a lot of good imagery, there's a lot of good language, but what can we say about the metaphor? There's one metaphor here, a piece of me stopped. Why does that matter? Now, because that shows emotional trauma. Now, forget physical trauma, this is just highlighting emotional trauma. Now, she's not saying, oh, I had a breakup, or one of my family members died. It probably is, look, if we're analysing this, I really want to go into deep methods, you could probably tell that is probably something like to do with emotion more than physical. Now, last one is juxtaposition. I'll do it here. Juxtaposition. Now, what do I mean by juxtaposition? Here's an example. There's fear versus normality. Again, what do I mean with that? Toy gun versus apple cracking. Do you see the reference? Toy gun, scared, a relief of after. Apple cracking, normal. Why is this important? Remember this, because this highlights how deep feelings happen quietly in the middle of daily life. So let's say you're walking through Trafford Centre and you experience deep feelings. Let's say you went through some emotional trauma. How this writer went through emotional trauma. Now, when you experience emotional trauma, it's random. You don't experience it. You just think of it randomly. So, what is saying here that the speaker occasionally remembers stuff randomly about this moment, and this moment is burned into her. So now, yeah, that is about it. Now also, this is a life-changing moment. So what can we say? This is a life-changing moment. And this is also realization. This is realizing you need to change. This changes her outlook. We didn't expand on outlook. You guys must be confused because what am I talking about outlook? This changes the outlook on the importance of connecting with other people. Also, the journey. This bus journey. Right, guys, I think that's about it. That's a very, very detailed analysis. You should try to remember these methods. Not all of them. Try to remember a few of them. Get them ready for your exam. Remember a few keywords like metaphor, piece of me, stopped, emotional trauma. Expand on that. So emotional trauma. What else can we say about emotional trauma? Just the resilience of humans now. We were expanding on a different point because a piece of me stopped that has nothing to do with resilience and humans being able to act normal, but we're expanding on other points. So even though she's not got into a complete crash out, she's not started smashing stuff up, she's not started saying get me off the train, she's not get me off the bus, she's just normal. Okay, so thank you very much for watching, and yep.